Hey guys, Mo Trapper. So it's August 4th today, and in Missouri we have a new season this year that starts April or August 1st, and it goes through October 15th, I think. I'll have to check on that, but we can take raccoons, possums, and striped skunks. So basically the nest raiders, and there's a bunch of videos on this kind of thing if you're more curious about that. But possums, raccoons, and striped skunks take a lot of eggs, so they're called nest raiders. If you're trying to promote turkey populations, quail populations, pheasant populations, any ground nesting bird, basically, taking out raccoons, striped skunks, and possums is a good strategy because again, those three critters are very hard on ground nesting birds, and the reason they're hard on is because they eat the eggs. But anyway, so I think there's a lot of folks who have a lot of interest in trapping, not necessarily for long line coyotes and bobcats and all that kind of stuff, but for uh, predator control on small leases, on places where they're hunting, things like that. And again, you know, I think this season was really uh, directed towards folks who are trying to do small trap lines on their own properties or on lease properties, on hunting properties to, help the ground nesting bird populations on their places. So I think there's a lot of interest in that now. There's been a lot of interest in that building. I think that's why, that this new season got passed, is because there has been a lot of interest in that. So what I wanted to do today was go over some of the stuff that you can use during this trapping season, this new season here in Missouri. Now this is limited to those three critters, right? And I'll bring the camera over and show you guys what I'm talking about here. Um, but so if you were going after coyotes and bobcats, foxes, things like that, you would typically you're going to use a foothold trap like this. This is a 4 coil. It's actually a coyote cuff is the brand. I did a video on this one a couple months ago. But this is the type of trap that you would use. Not necessarily this trap, but something similar to this, right? So when you set this trap, you're going to bury it just a little bit underground. So a critter's going to step on this pan, and these jaws are going to close and catch that critter, right? So they're going to be stuck in that trap like that. The issue with going after raccoons and possums and skunks with something like this is you're going to catch basically anything that steps in this trap, right? So you're going to catch domestic cats, domestic dogs, coyotes, bobcats, raccoons, possums, skunks. I've caught squirrels in traps like this. I've caught rabbits in traps like this. Basically anything that steps on this pan. It won't catch deer. Deer can pull out of them. Usually I've never had an issue with a deer in a trap like this, but pretty much anything else that's big enough to set that trap off and gets caught is going to be caught, right? They're going to be there. And obviously we don't want to do that whenever we're just targeting very specific critters. So in Missouri, you're allowed to use dog-proof traps, which these are dog-proof traps for this new season, right? And the difference between something like this and something like this is these are very targeted, okay? And I've got several of them out here just so you guys can see kind of a variety of the ones that are out there. This one is a Z trap. This one is called an R trap, and these are actually my favorite. They're basically a Z trap, but with a few differences. This is a Duke, and this is a Freedom brand from F&T. All very good traps. I've caught critters in all these. They all work very well. My favorite again is this one. But anyway, the reason that these traps are good is because you can target just raccoons and possums and skunks. And occasionally guys will catch foxes in these too. Possibly a domestic cat, but I don't think I've heard a lot of stories of that happening. So basically, if you catch a raccoon in something like this, they're notorious for what they call chewing out. So, again, they're caught like this. their hand is inside the trap and this is all open, raccoons will chew, stick their head through there and they'll chew on their hand until it's gone, and then there's no bigger part below the jaws, and then they'll just be free, right? With a trap like this, obviously it's fully enclosed. So when they put their paw down in there and hit that trigger and it pins them to it and holds them, they can't get down here to chew on that paw, so they can't free themselves from the trap. So, and the other thing is this targets, you know, those specific animals, because, you know, dogs, this is too small for most dog paws to get into. But dogs don't usually use their paws like hands, whereas raccoons and possums and skunks and sometimes foxes will. So that bait is all the way down at the bottom of there. And in order to set this trap off, you have to move that. You can see that moving, right? So there's a lever inside there. And in order to set the trap off, a raccoon or something that can grab, really, they have to reach down in there and either push down or pull up on that lever enough that it comes out of that groove there and sets that trap off. So that's why we use dog-proof traps, and that's why they're called dog-proof traps, because if you're trying to target raccoons with this and you have, you know, neighborhood dogs running around, domestic dogs running around, you're going to catch a lot of them, right? Because they're going to step on these just like a raccoon would, and they're going to end up getting caught. With these type traps, you're not going to catch dogs, okay? So that's why they call them dog proofs. Different styles, different types. Again, this is a Z trap. This is a push-pull trigger, okay? So that notch is basically free on both sides. And again, you can see that lever, and you can see that nub. So you set that nub right there on that end piece, and whether they pull it up or push it down, the trap's going to fire. This is the R trap, so it's a little bit different. It's got kind of a cross built into the trigger. See those little nubs? And then it's got those corresponding nubs there. So you set that up so it's right there in the center, and then if they push or pull, either way, the trap fires. The Dukes are pull only. So you can see I move that lever down. When I pull up on that lever, of course I can't do it now. When I pull up on that lever, that drops, and that lets that notch, or lets the dog come out of the notch, and then it fires. This is a push-pull Freedom brand. So this one's pretty complicated as far as a trap goes, or a dog-proof trap goes. But if I push or I pull, you can see that tab up here rotating, right? And that's what sets this one off. These are really nice for people who have, you know, maybe like arthritis, or even kids, because it's got a really big lever that you can use to set the trap. You can even just kind of lay them on the ground and just push down on them, and they'll set. They are harder to set off. So I do get some empty traps with these where the raccoon or whatever got all my bait and didn't set the trap off, because it is pretty difficult. Once you set this thing, it's pretty difficult to move this lever enough to fire the trap. So I think there's some videos on getting the trigger down a little bit on these so that they fire a little bit easier, but I haven't really messed with it. Again, I've caught raccoons and possums and stuff in them, but I do think you'll have, unless you watch the videos and maybe modify this, I think maybe you file this down a little bit so that the notch is a little less deep. I think you will have some emptied out traps without catches, more so with these than you would with any of these others. So that's basically the traps. The other thing that you're going to need if you want to get into this is a way to anchor these traps, right? So I've got a couple different methods here that I'm showing. So I made these cables, basically just made a loop in one end, and then on the other end I made a loop, but it's movable, right? So what I do is I'll take this, go around the tree or whatever I'm anchoring to, run this trap back through this hole. So I'll open this up so that it's big enough for the trap to go through, and then I'll cinch it back down. And then I can run this stake in the ground, set the trap, put the bait in it, and we're ready to go. This is how I prefer to set them up, because usually when you're trapping raccoons specifically, you're going to be, you know, in a creek bed, in a riverbank, somewhere where there's a lot of trees, someplace where you can, you know, easily find places to anchor off to. And I think these are about 6 feet long, just for reference. That usually gives you plenty of room to anchor to something solid and then move that trap out to where you want it to be. On this trap, I've got a more kind of traditional earth anchor, right? So this is a Freedom brand Wolf Fang earth anchor. If you're gonna anchor them like this, you know, obviously this lets you put them wherever you want them, because you just drive these into the ground. You do have to have a driver, right? So a specific driver that will drive this earth anchor into the ground, and you need a hammer, obviously, to hit that driver to drive this into the ground. But you just drive them down in, and then pull up on them, and they rotate like that so that they're anchored into the ground. And those work really well too. And there's several different types. I've always used Wolf Fangs, more so just because those were the first ones I bought, and they've always worked, so I've never had a reason to change. But there are Berkshires, and there's at least a half a dozen different types of earth anchors, and I don't think there's really that much difference between any of them. I think they all work just fine. I know guys that use, you know, several different types, and I've never heard, you know, super complaints about any of them. So you need the traps, you need a way to anchor them, right? Whether you're going to tie them off to something or whether you're going to use earth anchors, or a combination of the two. And the reason I have some of these on earth anchors is because there are some places where I trap, use these for raccoons and things, where there aren't any trees for, you know, a couple 100 yards. So it's a good idea to have them set up both ways, and then when you get to wherever you're going, you know, you can decide which attachment system you're going to attach to that trap, or which anchor system, and then you can, you know, just attach whichever one makes more sense for that area, and go from there. So the other thing that you're going to need is some sort of bait, right? And you can see this is the cheapest dry cat food that I could find at a local store. This is what I use most of the time. And I've also used some fish food. Fish food works really well. There's some grain in here too. You know, just make your own mix, basically, is what I do. I will take dry cat food. I will take fish food pellets, some ground up corn, you know. It doesn't really matter. You can just use this. It doesn't, you don't have to mix all that extra stuff in there. But basically take this, put it in a bucket, and I'll take, there's all kinds of different formulas. You can, you know, cook up your own as well. But I will take crawfish oil, and you can order all this stuff from like F&T, Trapper Supply, Hoosier Trapper Supply, you know, Katz Brothers, Liesl Rousset. They've all got this stuff. No BS Lures. They've all got different versions of this stuff. But you can take this, put it in a bucket, and get maybe a half a pint of salmon oil. You can use crawfish oil. You can use fish oil. You could use, gosh, there's all different kinds. But anything that's going to appeal to a raccoon. And you can also use, like Lee Rousset, I know, has some sweeter smelling ones. I think Dunlap has some sweeter smelling ones too, like berry or apple. But basically there's really two main flavors, if you want to call it that. There's basically two main flavors that raccoons are going to respond to well. One is sweet, the other one is fishy, right? So, and I guess you could even combine some of each. I've never tried that before, but I try to do, I think this has crawfish oil in it. So this is fish food, cat food, like I said, some grains, you know, crushed corn, and then crawfish oil. And I, you know, squirt a bunch in there, shake it all around. This stuff kind of becomes moist with that oil. You take that, you put it right down in here, just to below that trigger that's in there. And as long as it's anchored well, you walk away, come back the next day, right? The other thing, okay, so that's one way to bait. Another way to bait are these things. They're called coon grabbers. I've used these with some success too. So these are actually raspberry, and they're very strong smelling. So they're rubber pieces. They fit down inside, right? So you just shove them down in there, get them below the trigger. And that gives that raccoon something to kind of feel and grab onto, like they want to pull it up to get it out there so they can eat it. It does smell very good to them. So that's another thing you can do. And you can use these things over and over again. This is another example by Lee Rusat. This is a crayfish flavor. So this is another circle trigger bait method. And then another thing I like to do, this is Dunlap's Firefly Glow Coon. You can take some of this, it's very, very sweet smelling, and just kind of rub it right on the top lip, just a little bit, like a, I don't know, pea-sized amount or so. Rub it on the lip of that. That's going to get that raccoon over there to smell that, and they're going to notice what's down in there and try to get some of that cat food out. You can use straight crushed corn. You can use M&Ms. You can use Cheetos. Anything basically that you can think of that you can just dump down in there that a raccoon is going to want to investigate and eat. You can throw down in these things and it will work. Now, the only thing you really have to think about is rain, right? So if it's going to rain and you put a bunch of crushed up, I don't know, Snickers bars or something down in there, it's going to be quite the mess, right? After it rains, or if it's 100 degrees outside, it's just going to be a chocolatey, goopy mess in there. And you're going to have to, clean it out. So most of them have holes in the bottom, you can see there. I don't think the Duke does, but most of them have some sort of ports or holes. So you can kind of take a hose or, take them to the car wash and just spray down in there with a real strong spray, and it'll clean most of that out. But anyway, it can become quite a mess. The other thing, they'll get real muddy, and that can be kind of a mess too. But other than that, that's all you need. The other thing that I like are these, and these are called coon caps. So, and what you would do is you would set this trap, bait it, stake it, it's all set and ready to go, and then you just take this cap on top. And the reason you would do that is so that mice can't get in there and eat all your bait. I have quite a problem with mice here in southwestern Missouri is where I'm trapping, and if I don't use these, a lot of times I'll come back the next day, there'll be no bait in there, nothing caught, trap still set, but all my bait is gone. And that is usually due to not a raccoon stealing all my bait and being so smart that you didn't get caught, but actually a mouse will get down in there, eat all the bait out of it, and they're not heavy enough, or they just don't move around enough to set the trap off, and they get away with all my bait. If you put these on there, the mice can't pick them up to get them off. They can still smell that bait in there, but they can't get to it. But a raccoon, they're smart, and they can use their hands. They just pull them right off, and then they get down in there and get caught. So that's another thing I would recommend is the coon caps. If you're in an area that, for whatever reason you don't have a lot of mice problems, then you probably don't need them. But I do. Where I am, I definitely do. So that's kind of the overview. And I just wanted to, make this video to give you a little bit of an overview of what you need. And good luck out there trapping, guys. Thanks.